So, at this point, what we're going to be talking about is working with selections. And selections are really the key to understanding how to work inside of a Photoshop environment and what you can do. I'm just going to close that previous image that we had, and I could move directly to Bridge myself if I wished, or I can go to the mini bridge as you can see here. And whether you're in Bridge or the mini bridge, what I want you to open up is the Rose Photographer Studio picture that you see here. And as you can see, I'll just collapse mini bridge for a second. And I will go to the specific mode, screen mode that I want to see. And remember, you can see screen mode with the menu bar. And you can see those by pressing F as well. Just this simple F, Fox keyboard shortcut. So what we can see here is we've got this particular image at our disposal. Now, if I wanted to, I could make a selection which allows me to take a portion of the image or some of this image and remove it, for example, from its background or create something a little bit different. What I'll also introduce you to is this little icon right here, which is the layers icon. It's this one that I'm pointing to right here. If you don't see that for whatever reason, you can always go to the window menu and open up the layers icon right here. F7 is the shortcut, and you can attempt to do that. However, if you're on a Mac, that might be different from what your F7 shortcut key is configured to do right away. But nevertheless, if you're on a PC, F7 will work just fine. So as you can see here, I've got the layer palette. Right now the layer palette is written, or on it is written the word background. It's just one flat layer. And that's all that's really going on here. You'll notice that it's also a locked layer. If I were to take this black arrow tool and attempt to move it, it's going to give me a little error icon that says, hey, it's locked, sorry, you can't move it. If I wanted to, I could just double click this icon and change the new layer options to give it a new name like layer 0. Now if I were to move this, you'll see that it actually does move, and this entire layer that I have here actually happens to have a transparency. Right now, see, if I were to move it over here, all of this checkerboard pattern in the background represents a transparency. So that's some of the basics. But what if I wanted to make a selection and sort of remove this from its background, or just position it somewhere else? Well, a couple of things that you can do. You can work with the rectangular marquee tool. Now let me show you something about Photoshop or any other Adobe program. When you look at them inside the toolbar, you see that there's separations here, these little lines that separate the tools. That generally means that each of these groups of tools usually work in conjunction with each other or do similar things. So the first set of tools here are all about selecting and moving objects and doing different things. And there's a number of different tools that we'll be looking at that will allow us to do just that. Well, here the first one, and very easily we can see that this one here is the marquee tool. And what that allows us to do is to click and drag. So for example, if I were to click and drag around this, you end up seeing what we affectionately call the marching ants selection around this object. So that's specifically targeting the area inside of this object here. If I wanted to, I could go to the edit menu and I could do a number of things. I could say, let's cut what's in this selection, and we could paste it on another layer, or you could copy this and do a number of other things as well. Do note the shortcut, Command X for cut, almost think scissors, and copy is Command C and paste is Command V. Those are extremely important shortcuts. If ever you're unhappy with what you want to have happened, or let's say I didn't like this selection, you could always press Command Z or undo, and as you can see here, Edit Undo will undo that selection. Well, let me mention something else. Now I could come in here and I can make a different selection, and if I wanted to step back more than one step, instead of just pressing Command Z, you could go Edit and look here, Command Z, and you add the Option or Alt on your PC, and that allows you to jump back a number of steps, not just one but multiple steps. See this? Now it's more than just it says background instead of layer 0 as we did before. So Command Z moves back one step, Command Alt or Option Z moves back multiple steps. How many steps does it move back? Well, it moves back 20 steps, but that's it. If you wish, you can go into your preferences and increase the amount of undos that you're available to step back. But remember, Photoshop is enough of a hog on your RAM memory as it is, and if you were to do that, it would just eat up a lot more. So usually 20 should suffice. So remember this, if I make a selection, I could Command Z to undo that selection, but the best way to undo that selection is to look at here. Select menu up at the top. If you wanted to select everything on this canvas, that's Control A, select all. But if you wish to deselect, just press Control D or Command D on your Mac. And as you can see here, Command D, Control D will undo that selection. So that's really important. Now let's see what we can do with it. Let's say I was happy with this and I wanted to say copy it, Command C, copy. And then if I press Command V, you'll notice that I happen to have two layers here, one layer on top of the other one. Let's see what that looks like. I'm going to take my black arrow tool, the move tool. You could have pressed V on your keyboard shortcut. And let's see this. Notice by default, if I click on the background, I'm not able to move the background. I'm only able to move the one on the top. And why is that? Well, let's see. The move tool that I have here has auto selection area right here. And you'll see that I could select a group or I could auto select a layer. I like to use auto select layer. Why? Because look, layer 1 is highlighted here. If I want to move layer 1, that's great. But what if I want to move layer 2? The back or layer 0, the background. Well, now all I have to do is click on that layer and it will select the background here. Or click on the front, selects the one in front. So look, we copied what was in the selection and we pasted it into this area over here, right up on top. So that's great, but you know, if I were to hide the background, you would see all of that transparency that we did not copy. So that's a real good start, and we can see how that transformation or how the marquee selection, copying and pasting it, can work for you. But when we come back, we're going to explore some of the other selection tools that will allow us to get in a little bit closer around this edge and produce something that's a little bit different from what we've just seen.